What up, what up, what up? Hello and welcome everyone to this 40th episode of the Backwards K Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Asbrock, and I'm joined each and every episode by my esteemed colleague and phenomenal co-host, Scott Kaiser. Scott, my man, how you doing, buddy?
It would help if I turned on the mic. What's going on?
I was going to say, I can't hear you, so let's roll with this. Esteemed,
we're starting off swell.
Christ, that's a backwards K for us. Good Lord. Good.
But I will say I'm doing much better this week than I am after the past couple of weeks. The Braves are getting things going, man. Went to the desert and took 2 out of 3. Feeling good about the way things are. They're looking up, not as bad as they had been the last couple of Mondays. So I'll take it. How about you?
I can't complain. Just enjoying some college baseball. It was a great weekend for baseball. And then, watching a little bit of the Reds game right now. It's, Reds coming off of a nice winning road trip. I mean, you can't beat it, man. It's great.
Well, nothing wrong with that. And we've got a show to discuss things tonight. The Reds and Braves included, of course, because they always are. But let's go on ahead and start things off and get things right out of the gates. Let's just get in there and start things off. Devin Williams has lost his job already. That's right. The Yankees traded for Devin Williams this past offseason to be their lockdown closer. The man is a former all-star, once with the Brewers, now with the New York Yankees. And so far into his Yankees career, he has not been able to handle it. Coming into today, he had only pitched just 8 innings. And in those 8 innings, he'd given up 12 runs, 10 of which have earned. He's giving up a .462 batting average against his fastball. Not everybody is equipped to pitch in New York. And while, Devin Williams is like I said, a former all-star and has had plenty of pressure on him in the past in Milwaukee with playoff games and whatnot. The pressure in New York is a little bit different. Not everybody can succeed in the environment. Not everybody takes the criticism that quickly comes. And I can promise you, they're already grumbling in New York about we ain't got this guy. He's supposed to be one of the best there. And it's not quite working out how they had hoped. They have very short patience there in New York. I don't know if this is just because Devin Williams is a new place, getting used to his surroundings and things just haven't clicked. If he isn't ready for the bright lights of New York and it just, wanting to succeed so badly, the pressure has gotten to him a little bit more than they thought. Or this is my theory. They made him shave the beard and then reverse course. But the power was in the beard before he shaved it. Chris, What is going on in New York with Devin Williams? And do they have a problem, or is it just something he's going to work through?
I'd have to think it's something he's going to work through. I mean, he's proven himself over his career. I mean, I was just looking at his stats. He's got an 11.25 ERA, and that has ballooned his career ERA to 2.14. So, yeah, goodness. I know. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. But, he's 0-2 this year. Again, he's proven himself since he started in 2019 with Milwaukee. You know what you're going to get from Devin Williams. And I think it might just be a situation where once that pressure kind of wears off a little bit, he might be in much better shape. But if he can't work through it, then it could be an interesting issue for the Yankees. But overall, though, I'd have to think Devin Williams is going to work himself out of this. He's too good of a pitcher to really, be struggling this much. But again, the bright lights of Milwaukee compared to the bright lights of New York are completely different. So that is a real factor. So that could be something, to definitely keep an eye on. But again, Devin Williams he's a solid pitcher. Like I said, I'm thinking he's going to get himself out of this by himself. It's just a matter of, just continuing to work hard. He's 4 saves and 5 opportunities so far. It's not like he's, blown a ton of saves, but it's, you know, just got to get it done. I'd have to think Devin Williams is going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the consensus is that he's been doing this for too long and too high of a level to not figure it out. And it's so early in the season. There could be a million and one things kind of pushing things in this direction. But it is something to kind of keep an eye on. Luckily for the Yankees and their fans, they do have Luke Weaver in the bullpen, who they had before. Clay Holmes obviously left to go be a starter for the Mets, so they don't have him at the back end of the bullpen. But Luke Weaver has done an admirable job of locking down games for them before. So it's nice that they have somebody to turn to, who they have faith in, and who is able and proven to do the job. I would also say that it's good news if you're Yankees fans that Williams, this is the last year of his deal. So he is a free agent at the end of this season. So
I forgot about that.
do go south and, he doesn't ever quite get comfortable. And even if, he kind of settles in, it just, like you mentioned, there's pitching in New York and there's pitching everywhere else. And we've seen it time and time again with all-star players and guys that, have a long list of credentials. I mean, infamously, Randy Johnson couldn't even pitch well in his short stint when he played for the Yankees. Like, not up to his standards. Like, he pitched fine, but he succumbed to the pressure, shoved the cameraman days into getting traded to them. Wasn't a type of guy that liked the attention and the media following him around everywhere. It just didn't quite work out. Maybe that's how it is for Devin Williams. Maybe he's just more comfortable in a spot like Milwaukee, and maybe this year is just going to be a grind. Because I imagine at some point he will have success of some sort. I don't think that he's going to be sitting here with an 11-run ERA for the entirety of the season, but I mean, he could ultimately just not be himself, or the Devin Williams that we're all used to seeing, at which point, the Yankees aren't going to re-sign him, and it'd be easy enough to just part ways and everybody go on and do their different things. But for this one season, I do think that Devin Williams at some point will lock it in, figure it out, and be pitching for the Yankees. And if for some reason he doesn't necessarily, I know they did trade for him, obviously thinking that he was going to be their closer. Devin Williams was the setup man for a long time there for Hader in Milwaukee, for Josh Hader, before Josh Hader departed, and then he took over that role as closer. So, it's not an unfamiliar role for him to kind of be pushed to the eighth inning or those higher leverage innings prior to the ninth. Maybe that's how he gets it, or maybe it may just be that he ends up just being really good in that role this year for New York, and they have to kind of settle for it's not what they had hoped for, but a high leverage reliever nonetheless, who is just more comfortable pitching in innings that aren't the ninth. I don't know. Like, that's
maybe he's tanking on purpose to get out of there.
And maybe he's tanking on purpose again. Maybe he really was upset about the beard thing and is never going to get over it. Never wanted to get over it. And even though they've let up on the beard policy, he's like, you know what? I'm out of here.
But in all seriousness, though, like, if you weren't like entirely happy to go to an organization, I'm not saying you're not going to go out there and try hard, but that it's like, all right, I'm not going to resign here. It's, what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like, and I'm not saying he's going to do that, but it's like, I mean, maybe he is. Good for him.
Yeah, I mean, what you're trying to say is this is like, if truly deep down, his heart isn't necessarily in playing in New York. Yes, he's a professional. Yes, he's going to go out there and do his job. But if there's something there that's just not, he knows that he doesn't want to be there ultimately, then it could hinder him all year. And affect him to the point of him not pitching well. Again, I don't think that will be the case. And for Devin Williams, who I like as a pitcher and as a player, I hope that it's not the case. I would rather him succeed and then give them the middle finger and walk away. That it would actually be sweeter.
Totally.
Like, pulling him from this role now, and then for the rest of the season just be lights out. Of course, without them winning a World Series, because I can't have that. But for him to just go on and just mow down the rest of the way and be that guy that we all know, and then to be like, I never really wanted to be here, and now that I can test free agency, deuces. That would be the ultimate Devin Williams story, as far as I'm concerned. Of course, I say that, and then I'll get my wish, and then I'll end up at the back end of the Dodgers bullpen, and I'll be like, "Oh, cool." So trade one devil for the other. So be careful what you wish for, I suppose. But
lesser of the two evils, though. We'll say that.
It is the lesser of the two evils, but could you imagine that with everything that they've done, as far as starting pitching, nonstop and every starter under the sun. And then, they did add Scott to the back end of that bullpen this offseason, but, they didn't hesitate to add Kirby Yates and a couple of other high leverage guys and former closers and whatnot. And why not just throw Devin Williams back out there and, throw him $15 million a year to just be a guy? It would be something so Dodgers. But speaking of the Dodgers, while we're on said topic, they are back in the news for the wrong reasons this weekend as well. Yesterday, one of their aces, one of those starters that we mentioned, which is why they kind of have gone the route that they have and stacking up a bunch of guys and having just an army of starting pitchers at their disposal. Well, one of the ones that stays injured, big shocker, is injured again. That would be Tyler Glasnow. This is the second game in a row yesterday that he left early with an injury. This time it was his shoulder that was barking at him. He went out to the mound in the second inning, started to warm up, had to leave. He's pissed. He's frustrated. He doesn't know, what else to do anymore. And, he said he's tried everything. There's still things that he'll try if it's going to work, but he said as frustrated as the fans are and the teams that he's been employed by are, maybe like nothing is more frustrating than it is to him not being able to be out there and be able to pitch. And I got to be honest, it sucks to hear that Glasnow is hurt yet again.
Yeah.
But also it's one of those things that we've seen this so many times. That's kind of like, that checks out. Like at this point in Glasnow's career, unfortunately, you just know you're not going to get a full season. Like he's going to at least have one stint on the IL. This probably won't be his only one. You just know you're not going to get a full slate. Yeah, you just know you're not going to get a full slate of starts out of a guy. It just is what it is. One of the best in the world when he's healthy, but he's almost never healthy.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I was, reading the article. While he was warming up for the second inning, Glasnow said something grabbed on his final throws. He had felt some on and off discomfort in his shoulder, which he attributed to the mechanical changes he had made to his delivery before the season. So, that right there, when you're consistently injured, you're switching up different things. I mean, it's just another check in the injury factor part of it. It's tough. And, just making a lot of changes, trying to figure out a way to stay healthy. I think some of the changes led to other things kind of taking over, Glasnow said. And at this point, I'm just trying to figure out what to do. It's just extremely frustrating. And, we talk about all the time. It sucks seeing these top players injured. Like it sucks for the game.
It really does.
Yeah. I mean, Tyler Glasnow, man, when he's like you said, when he's healthy, he's one of the best in the game. And it sucks when you see a guy who is injured and then is trying to adjust, his mechanics and everything like that. And then it takes a toll on other parts of, the body, including, the same, might be the same arm or shoulder or anything like that. It's just different wear and tear on it because you're switching things up. It just, man, it's snowballing, and it's just a damn shame to see, especially like I said, for Tyler Glasnow, who is, one of the game's best, man, when he's healthy. But again, like I said, when you were talking, Jacob deGrom, same situation. When Jacob deGrom is healthy, he's one of the best in the game, hands down, one of the best in the game. But you can't count on him for a full season, and That's where Glasnow is right now, and it sucks, man. It sucks bad.
Yeah, again, it's frustrating, and I know, give crap to the Dodgers signing everybody in the sun, and in Glasnow's case, they had traded for him from Tampa Bay, and got him in there, and then signed him to an extension. Again, though, ultimately, rooting for injuries is a loser's mentality. Like I never root for guys to get hurt and their career to be taken or anything. It's one thing to root for guys to perform poorly, in certain instances, because that's going to happen anyway. So it's more of I sure hope this guy performs poorly at this time to benefit my team. But never rooting for injuries, and for Tyler Glasnow, you never really have to anyway, even if you were the type of person that did. It's like clockwork, and it's unfortunate. Yep. And I don't like it for the Dodgers either. They've got this army of pitchers that they have to kind of keep dipping into, and even then it's not enough. They're having to rely on guys deep into their minors, or they threw a bullpen game the other day, in April. No less. It would have been unheard of once upon a time, but injuries mount, and you got to do what you got to do. They do have Tony Gonsolin coming back this week off of IL. He spent the last year and change dealing with coming back from Tommy John surgery, so he will be back in the rotation for LA, but again, has missed quite a bit of time, so it'll take him a little bit to get back up to speed. And we talked about Snell last week, Blake Snell being on the IL with his bum shoulder. So Dodgers got a lot of problems. Of course, for them, all that matters is making it to October, and then they'll worry about it from there. Hell, last year at this, at World Series time, they didn't have more than 2 starters. I think that they had confidence in. So as long as they can get there, they'll be all right. But as we discussed prior to the season starting and in the last couple of weeks, I don't know, West, man, it's no cakewalk. It's not easy. The Padres and the Diamondbacks are not looking to just give the Dodgers the NL West or give them a playoff spot. So the Dodgers are going to have to play pretty good baseball through the entire season to make sure that they don't fall back to the rest of the pack. Of course, if time comes, they've got the ammunition to make the moves that they need to make. But, as long as their competition is playing competent baseball and keeping the pressure on them to make sure that they do go out there day in and day out and win as many games as possible. Again, I don't expect that the Dodgers won't be there in the end or that they won't ultimately win this division, but it makes it interesting for the next few months when the Dodgers are dealt these injuries one on top of another. And I don't care who you are, if your whole starting rotation is injured, it's going to be tough to win baseball games. You're just not going to go out there and beat everybody's brain in and score 10 runs a game for a month at a time. So,
okay, I just looked at the standings. The freaking Giants are 19-10, leading the division.
And there you go. Didn't even evoke that name. The leaders of the division right now. So that's
I had no freaking clue that was the case.
Yeah, there's another team
getting it done.
Yeah, Buster Posey has quietly put together a little bit of a squad there. So there you go. Add the Giants to the list of teams that the Dodgers are going to have to compete for. I mean, the NL West might be the most interesting division this year. And
the top 4 teams are separated by 3.5 games.
Right, and we expect the AL East to have a lot of participants and to be exciting. But I think this NL West might be the race of the season, just based on how everybody in that division is performing now and how we expect them to perform the rest of the way. Because I don't think the Giants are going away. They've got just enough to hang around and be interesting. So
if they stay healthy,
with an early lead.
Yeah, I don't see him going anywhere. Damn. That's crazy. I was like, okay, I just wanted to see what the standings look like. I was not even remotely expecting that, because they have been, you want to talk about a team flying under the radar in first place? The San Francisco Giants are that team.
Although to be completely fair when it comes to standings and whatnot, I hadn't I'm really super paid attention. Like I know that the Mets are ahead and the Dodgers and the Yankees are ahead in their respective divisions. But outside of that, I haven't paid too much attention to standings. But yeah, a surprise nonetheless to hear that the Giants were at the top. In fact, I said 3 other teams' names that I would guess were at the top before I guessed the Giants. So all disrespect to them, I guess. The only one that I wouldn't have confused for being the leader is Colorado, who right now,
we made fun of the White Sox.
Yeah, well,
I apologize to the Chicago White Sox. I apologize.
You stole the words right out of my mouth because it's like we talked about how we expected the White Sox to suffer yet another, embarrassing type season as far as losses go and being at the bottom of all of Major League Baseball. But Colorado is going to give them a run for their money this year. They are not a very good baseball team. And at this point, like a very poorly run organization, when you look at who they have, and at least if you're the White Sox, you can say, and it's because they stripped it all down and then start over. Yeah. But I mean, at least they've got players now. Like they have guys, names that names that you expect to blossom and grow over the next few years. There's still a lot of work to be done, but there's at least hope. And in Colorado, I don't know what they're doing, man, because even the guys that they got there that they've pinned their hopes on, it's like they shuttle them up and down. They kind of get forgotten over time. Dolander's come up and he's been hit or miss, but he struggled to the point where maybe you're going to have to send him back down. It's just, Colorado has always been a place that, they're not necessarily going to be in it, but they always gave you, they were always competently put together, at least on offense. It felt like they're not necessarily going to be a complete team and scare anybody into thinking that they're making the playoffs, but you at least looked at that offense and thought, on any given night, they can really do some damage and make it hard for you to win. Middle of the road in that division. And now, I mean, you go in there and you expect, whenever you play the Rockies, you expect to win 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, almost hands down. They struggle to put a complete team out there every night, let alone have a complete roster when it comes to the entire organization. So, yikes. We move on, though, but keeping with the injury news, unfortunately. Another pitcher who this time – it's his first time. He's not as familiar with some of the other pitchers. I was like, yeah, that's right. For the first time in his career, Logan Gilbert of the Seattle Mariners is headed to the IL, first time in his professional career, but it is the 15-day variety. And words that we don't like to hear, his elbow was barking.
Yep.
Issues with his elbow. They're saying right now that he has a mild flexor strain, but unfortunately, when it comes to flexor strains in the forearm and the elbow and anything along those lines, oftentimes it is a precursor to Tommy John. It usually means that there's some type of structural damage. Best case scenario, a couple years ago, and even parts of last year, possibly, I'm trying to remember, but Max Fried had issues with his forearm and whatnot, and they were able to shut him down. Now, it was about 2 months, and it turned out it was nerve damage that was bothering him. But again, it's 2 months minimum. Generally, like best case scenario. So even if Gilbert is not done for the year or isn't going to necessarily, it wasn't the end of seeing him for the season, there's a good chance that we won't be seeing him for the next 6 to 8 weeks, one way or the other. So not good for Seattle, not good for Logan Gilbert. And again, very unfortunate. If I'm not mistaken, he led all of Major League Baseball in innings pitched last year. So he is the modern day version of a workhorse in every sense of the word. The top of that Seattle rotation, and we've mentioned the names that they've had, but the problem with Seattle and the names that they have in that rotation is they don't have a whole lot of depth. We've already had to tap into some of that with injuries, and Seattle's playing pretty decent baseball too for a team that we also pegged to kind of struggle, but they've played well here recently and well to start the season. So rather sizable blow to the Mariners prospects for this upcoming season, Chris.
Yeah, that was the team that was in first place, and that's I mean, he's the race. So you've got a guy like Logan Gilbert on the IL. Now a lot of that pressure falls onto guys like Brian Wu, obviously Luis Castillo, Dylan. Oh, geez, I'm losing. Forgetting the guy's name. But Emerson Hancock is another one. Oh, Bryce Miller. I don't know why I said Dylan. Bryce Miller.
I was gonna say, I was like, Dylan Moore's the only Dylan that I know that they have.
Yeah, Bryce Miller is who I was thinking of. I had a brain cramp there, but that's the thing is, now you're starting to get, the pressure starting to fall on these guys. When you have pitchers that you are used to having being healthy, you don't really expect, situations like this to crop up, and it sucks. So, but luckily, we had talked about Seattle having this just incredible depth of pitching in the the rotation, everything like that. Well, now it's going to be tested, and hopefully for a guy like Logan Gilbert, who again is definitely one of the top arms in the game overall, but even one of the top arms in the American League, to be on the IL with any elbow issue is never good. So hopefully, for somebody like him, it's nothing. It's just something. Hopefully that rest can take care of, and he'll be right back to being the Logan Gilbert we all know. But man, it's like I said, for a team like Seattle, who's a game up in the division, this is not something you want to see. So, I know they're holding their breath and praying hard that it's nothing serious for Logan Gilbert.
Yeah, and I mean, you already had George Kirby to start the season. They're on the IL.
That's right. I forgot about George Kirby. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, they're somewhat might argue ace between him and Gilbert. So you come into the season, you already had one of your top two pitchers on the shelf, and he's working his way back still 2 or 3 weeks at least from for getting back out there. So they'll have him to kind of fill that void. But in the interim, start thinking about it. It's like Wu has had his troubles, his arm troubles and staying healthy. So, Brian Wu, another fixture in that rotation. You mentioned Miller. Bryce Miller.
Yep.
I don't know that he's had too many injury problems, but again, all of these guys, when it comes to pitching, it's in any given day type situation. And with Seattle already being down 2, they really can't afford to lose anymore. And, they've struggled with offense the last couple of years. That's been their bugaboo. The offense has held them back, and they've been trying to fix it and get it to where, it can kind of keep up with the pitching. Well, now the offense is going to have to carry a little bit more of that load, especially in the short term, and especially if Gilbert's not going to be around for the rest of the way. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that affects the pennant race there in the AL West. Don't like it for Seattle, though. I can tell you that much. It sucks for them, but again, sucks for baseball and sucks for the fans, because one of the top pitchers in all of baseball, to whatever metrics you want to look at, and now he's on the shelf, and we get deprived of seeing him perform for the next couple of months or possibly even years. So bummer all the way around when it comes to these pitching injuries, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way. I wish there was a foolproof way that we could prevent it. And I miss the days where Tommy John surgery happened to just a handful of guys each season, to where now it's like it's a handful of guys per roster.
Oh yeah.
That are having, Tommy John. So it all starts to add up quickly. And there's a part of me sometimes, though, that thinks it's like, you imagine how many guys get opportunities because of injuries.
Yep.
Like there are so many more pitchers that we end up learning about, or that end up getting thrust into situations where we can learn about them, or where they succeed to the point where they become stars in their own right. And it's directly related to the fact that the guy in front of them had arm troubles in some way, shape, or form. So it's the good with the bad, but I would prefer that guys not be given the opportunity because of injury, because again, that means that we're deprived of somebody who has established themselves already as a major leaguer. So big time bummer. And no easy way to transition into this next story. We're talking about big time bummers, but this weekend, a longtime baseball executive, Walt Jocketty, passed away at the age of 74 from natural causes. You may remember Walt as the architect of the St. Louis Cardinals teams that produced big there in the early 2000s, then made his way to the Cincinnati Reds, where he helped them get back to the playoffs and succeed for a few years. This last big time playoff run that they had. And then Walt stayed on and in various roles in the front office right to the end. So unfortunate to hear that Walt Jocketty had passed away. And honestly, 74, I know that it sounds old, but then thinking about Walt and how his hair was white and he looked kind of on the older side for such a long time, my first instinct was, wow, Walt Jocketty was only 74 years old. I would have guessed so much older. But very unfortunate to hear, and I know you have much more to say about Walt, considering he, like I said, helped orchestrate those Reds teams that had success there for a little while.
I mean, he was, 3-time MLB Exec of the Year. When he was with the Cardinals, he oversaw the drafting of Pujols and Yadier Molina. So the guy, he kind of knows what he's doing. And he built the Reds, ball club into the start of the playoff team that we saw from 2010 on, and we did only see it for a couple years, but he was he showed why he's one of the best executives in baseball. It sucks. I mean, anytime you see somebody like that, it's pass away, it's a shame, because again, he meant a lot to the game of baseball overall. And I'm just kind of going through and seeing, he was, with the Cardinals for 13 seasons with Tony La Russa, obviously the Hall of Fame manager there. Those teams were 7 postseason appearances, 2 National League pennants. From 94 to 2007 is when he was there. He was one, just kind of reading up on it, it's like, wow. He was responsible for bringing in McGuire, Rowland, Larry Walker, Chris Carpenter, Jim Edmonds, Isringhausen, Adam Wainwright. Dang, that's impressive, And during that time with the Cardinals, won the division in 96, 2000, 2002, 2004, 05, 06. They reached the World Series in 04 and 06 and won the World Series in 06. So, that's a hell of a resume just with one team. And then, like I said, then what he did with the Reds, from bringing, them kind of, back out of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but, non-existent. Like the Reds for the longest time were nothing. And, he was a fundamental part in building that club up, to, their first postseason appearance, from, 2010 on. Like I said, it's, hell of a job. So impressive stuff, from Walt Jocketty throughout his career. Again, just a great baseball mind who is going to sorely be missed throughout the game, just because, like I said, his presence has been felt throughout the league. Many people who have worked under him and with him, obviously, like I said, it's, you hate to see a big name like that, unfortunately pass. So Walt Jocketty, hell of a career. And, just wow. Just kind of going through and reading the accolades he had and everything he accomplished. Impressive stuff. Very impressive stuff.
Dude, I had no idea that he was part of those Oakland teams in the 80s that got put together with the Bash brothers and all that, and winning the title in 89. I had no idea that that's where he came from. For me, my first experiences and knowledge of who Walt Jocketty was as the Cardinals front office, exec there. And I mean, he was like, you mentioned the names, but those Cardinals teams that he put together were really, really good. And they got put together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
From that time there in '94, it's like he brought in McGuire and then that string of guys. And then that was the foundation for those years and that kind of persona that the Cardinals kind of picked up, where it's just like they were expected to win. They were expected to be in the playoffs every year during that tenure. And, they got compared to, by me specifically, kind of got compared to the Steelers, just in that, they operated in a certain way, and it may have been unconventional to some others, but they kept people in place for a long time, and they just kept plugging away and finding a way and replacing guys when they could always find answers to replace guys. And Walt made it look easy. And it wasn't shocking that he was able to do the same thing in Cincinnati. In fact, I remember wondering, like, hey, it's kind of easier to do in St. Louis because of the ownership group there and then giving them time and everything. But damn if he didn't come into Cincinnati and do the same thing, which was probably more impressive than doing it in St. Louis, just because of the constraints that Cincinnati has and the money limitations where they don't necessarily have those in St. Louis. So hell of a guy, hell of a GM, and baseball will definitely miss an architect like Walt Jocketty. He knew how to put teams together and how to get the most out of the talent that he brought in. So, and on that note, I don't want to leave things very sour like that. So, the other day, I saw an interview with Clayton Kershaw in the minor leagues, who was on rehab assignment and should be back with the Dodgers shortly enough. That should help them with their starting pitcher. But this is a thing for Clayton Kershaw that he's done over the last, 4 or 5 years, which is to end up back with the Dodgers, even though all signs point to him not, or retiring or whatever. They've more or less worked it out to where he basically only pitches half a season in the playoffs. It's just the thing. But anyway, an interviewer had asked Clayton Kershaw who would be on his Mount Rushmore for pitching if he were to assemble one. And his answers, the question immediately, I posed the question to myself and thought, wow, it's a really good question to ask. There's a ton of qualified people to go on that Mount Rushmore. I don't know how you would narrow it down. What are the qualifications? Who could get eliminated and who's not worthy of it? But ultimately, thinking about the Mount Rushmore, like thinking about actual Mount Rushmore and the presidents that are on there, and it's not necessarily the most accomplished or the most famous or most prudent. It's just a representation of some of the best presidents we've had, and some of the ones that have accolades from different times for different reasons. And so that's kind of how I was thinking. We should assemble our own if we were to have ours. Clayton Kershaw's included Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Sandy Koufax, and Nolan Ryan, which, I mean, honestly, from a guy who's going into the Hall of Fame as a pitcher himself, it's not like I have much room to argue with the guy. I mean, if that was if somebody came out tomorrow and said, here's your Mount Rushmore, we're sculpting this, I wouldn't pound my fist on the table. But because that's boring and because it doesn't lead to a debate, I immediately, posed the question to Chris, and Chris was not entirely enthusiastic about it because it's hard. It is a very hard exercise to do, to narrow down the list of eligible pitchers who have pitched in Major League Baseball and say, here's 4 of them that I think accurately represented. So I'm gonna let Chris go after I do, since he was having such problems, and I almost immediately can come up with my 4, and I will say that I did take one from Clayton Kershaw because it was to me the most obvious one, and that's Nolan Ryan. Like Nolan Ryan absolutely has to be on any Mount Rushmore for me personally. I don't think you can talk about baseball and pitching and strikeouts and what it means without having Nolan Ryan on there. So one of my 4 will be Nolan Ryan. Yep. I also would like to have Bob Gibson on my Mount Rushmore to represent, the fact that I personally feel like there needs to be somebody to represent players of color. And Bob Gibson happens to be one of the first and most dominant people of color to pitch. And the stories about Bob Gibson and how much he hated losing and backing down and all the things that he did are just so legendary to me. And the numbers obviously back that up as well. So for me, I would have Bob Gibson on there. And then I did also say that I would have a lefty to represent somebody, because that was part of what Kershaw had mentioned, with having Koufax and being his lefty. Now, for me, Koufax would be a perfectly fine lefty to have on there. I'm not going to argue with Koufax, but I never saw Koufax pitch. I've only seen highlights. I've only heard things. So for my left-handed representative up on there, I would also take the big unit, as did Mr. Kershaw, and put him up there. He's at worst probably the second best lefty of all time. But again, watched him pitch, saw him pitch a perfect game against my Braves, in numerous playoff games, the Seattle days, the Arizona days, and back again, and everything in between. Just incredible to watch. Hard to put anybody above him as far as I'm concerned. And then for the final spot on my Mount Rushmore, again, it's hard to do because there's always going to be some bit of homerism. And while I do dislike immensely having to not say that I would have Pedro Martinez on there, because I think Pedro Martinez is maybe pound for pound the best pitcher that I've watched pitch. But for my money, my favorite pitcher of all time to watch, and he happens to play for my team, and it would represent the control pitchers, would be Greg Maddux. I would have Greg Maddux as my 4th representative on there. Now, my thinking was, again, Bob Gibson represents, people of color. You have Randy Johnson on there who represents lefties. You have Greg Maddux on there who represents control, and then you have Nolan Ryan who just dominates and strikeouts and all of that, and it just one of those prototypes of pitchers. So that would be my 4, and the way that I justify having on there. Some people may say homer by having Maddux, but like I told Chris when I initially said it, it's like, hey, the man has a type of game named after him where if you pitch under 100 pitches and get through a complete game, they call it a Maddux. That is an unofficial term for said pitching outing. So I figure if that's a qualification, I don't know. I don't know what is to get up on Mount Rushmore if that's not a qualification. So those are my 4: Maddux, Gibson, Randy Johnson, and Nolan Ryan. Chris, I go to you for your 4, and I know it was a struggle, so I'm interested to ultimately hear what the 4 you came down to. And there's no judgment. Like, I feel like there's no real wrong answer. I told you that there was the only way that I would be like, wow, that was a few less named 4 of your favorite players, regardless of how they performed. That'd be kind of lame, but yeah, again, I don't feel like anybody could necessarily be wrong with this answer. So
no, and not like when you brought it up, I was like, I'm not doing this. This is a stupid exercise. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Like, I legitimately was going from Kershaw's list, and I was like, well, I agree with all those. That's it. That's my list.
Right? Yeah.
And the crazy part is, we didn't discuss our list. I mean, full blown until you just said it. So I didn't know.
Yes.
You're 4 for certain until just now. So I've legitimately gone through. Nolan Ryan is definitely on there, for all the exact. I mean, I can't really add. I'm not going to be able to add anything else to this list, in terms of like everything's going to be basically a verbal retweet on it. Randy Johnson, obviously, for the same reasons there. I did have Pedro on mine. So.
Okay, which is fair.
Yeah, I mean, Pedro, man, when that dude's on, man, it was insane. But then I
just think every time I think about Pedro and his accolades, just sorry to interrupt you, but for me, 99, his stats in 1999 to me, every time I look at those numbers, are still to this day some of the most insane things. It's like if you go back and look at his numbers in 1999, go ahead because I'm gonna look them up. But
I was gonna say
go ahead with your fourth.
And then my fourth, so I literally went between Greg Maddux, Tom Seaver, or not Tom Seaver. Well, Tom Seaver was on there. I did go briefly, but then I was like, nah, because then I was going between him and Sandy Koufax, and I did think of Bob Gibson as well. But I went back to Greg Maddux because, again, I think it pulls on the fact that I watched him pitch. I never got to see Sandy Koufax. Yeah. I never got to see Tom Seaver. Those guys like that. But I mean, Greg Maddux, like you said, he got a game named after him. And, like an 86 pitch complete game. Like, are you shitting me? That kind of stuff. Like, that's just, it's unheard of. Like, but there was never a pitcher that I tried to emulate more growing up than I wanted to do Greg Maddux. I did the same, the same wind up.
Yep.
I did the same thing and just wanted to pitch. I want to paint those corners like Maddux could, man. It was just like that dude was, he was unbelievable. So, I mean, I added Pedro to my list, but yeah, Nolan, Maddux, Randy, and Pedro. Those are my four. And I think, had I just turned 42. I wish I was a little older to where I would have been able to see Bob Gibson pitch, to see, Sandy Koufax and Tom Seaver, those guys pitch. Like that would have been, that'd have been amazing to see. But that's why Greg Maddux and Pedro get my nod, over those other three because of the fact that, I actually, watched those guys, deal, in real time. And it's incredible. Same thing with Nolan Ryan. I mean, that dude, Ryan, you want to talk about just absolute gas. Nolan and Randy, man, those guys, good Lord. Just amazing. Truly amazing to watch.
And I got those stats immediately.
Okay, perfect.
From Martinez. So in 1999, are you ready for this? Like, even reading it, I'm just like, good God, that's insane. He went 23-4. His ERA was 2.07. And he had 313 strikeouts in 31 starts.
Like,
I mean, when they say video game numbers, those are literally video game numbers. And that's why it's hard to because I think of that season immediately when I think of like an individual, like one season shot. And I look at those numbers and I'm like, man, that's it. It's so hard to not put Pedro on there for me. Like, I feel like, I'm wrong. But who do I kick off? Right. Like, I mean, it's hard to justify who to kick off. I don't have anybody, but that single season to me, the numbers just blow my mind because that was also right in the middle of the steroid era on top of that. Like in 99, that's firmly in the steroid era when everybody's going nuts. And he, of small stature, because Pedro Martinez was not a big dude, able to put up numbers like that amongst these giants, because all of the guys that were, hitting dongs and knocking them out and being on roids at the time were huge. And for Pedro to just go out there and just dominate them all, dude, it's so wild to me. So wild to me.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, when you see the numbers and you actually read them out, my God.
I mean, he struck out 5 of 6 in the All-Star game, and the man had 15 wins at the All-Star game. So actually, his second half was pretty crappy by Pedro standards because he only had, he only ended up with another 9 wins. I'm trying to do the math there. What did I say?
Yeah.
3. But anyway, jeez, and his ERA, he lowered his ERA. His ERA at the All-Star break was 2.10. He finished with 2.07. Like, what is that? What even is that, man?
Like you said, it's video game numbers on easy is what it is. You turn the difficulty to easy and roll with it from there, and that's what you're getting.
At a time when it was not easy at all to be doing something like that. Like, incredible. And yet I'm like, it's not good enough to be one of my 4.
Yeah, joke's on you.
I know. I say Pedro's gonna be. He's gonna find me in an alley and beat my ass sometimes. So. Pedro also he's a fighter. We know that.
Yeah, we definitely know that one. Yeah. Good Lord.
Oh man, well I think that's a good place to leave it. As hard or as intimidating, like when you first pose the question, it's definitely like I don't know, but
I hated it.
Once you kind of suss it out, it's all good. But speaking of all good, things are all good for another episode here of the Backwards K Baseball Show. We appreciate you guys joining us. We try to do this each and every Monday, and we thank you guys for the support. We're on here on YouTube. We go live. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. The Impact Sports Cincinnati podcasting group, as well as the Craft Food Sports Podcasting Network. You find us where you find all your fun podcasts. We're all over the place. Again, we love talking baseball. We try to do this at least once a week. It's our passion. So we appreciate you guys checking us out. We appreciate your support. And for Chris, I am Scott. This has been another episode of the Backwards K Baseball Show. We'll see you guys next week.